Hey YouTube, today I want to talk to you guys about Cesarean Birth Awareness Month. So, as some of you might know, this month is C-Section Awareness Month, or as I like to call it, Cesarean Birth Awareness Month. This is a really important month, not only for the moms who maybe wound up with an unexpected emergency cesarean birth, but also for moms who choose a cesarean birth and plan it in advance, whether it's just for personal convenience or it's for a medical condition, or maybe they have had a previous cesarean birth, so they don't want to attempt a VBAC and they choose a repeat cesarean. For cases of multiples where maybe they're out of position, they're not both head down, they're, multiple complications, many factors, there is a cesarean birth option for people, and it's not always this crisis emergency scenario, and sometimes it is a choice that a person can make, before labor even begins, and it's a valid choice. So this month is really important both for the women and people, birthing people, who choose to have a cesarean birth, but also the ones who wind up with the emergency, unexpected scenario, which I think is what everyone really focuses on. And today, that is kind of what I'm going to focus on, because that was me. For those of you who have been following for a while, a little over 17 months ago, I gave birth to Charlie via a very unexpected emergency cesarean. Yes, it did save both of our lives. I had to get 2 blood transfusions, during and after it was all said and done. Thankfully, she came out of the whole ordeal okay, unscathed, healthy. Her APGAR scores were great. And it's really a miracle based on the situation. So those of you, again, who have been following me forever will remember that I was planning a peaceful water home birth with her. I had some lingering, birth issues from my son, and I wanted this beautiful, peaceful, healing birth, especially being a birth worker myself, as a doula. I'm like, this is my vision for the birth. I'm going to do everything I can to basically make it happen. I was prepared. My pregnancy was perfect. You can go back and watch my old pregnancy videos. And then one night, after my due date, I didn't think labor was coming. Everything had kind of slowed down and stopped. I had no signs of labor. Went to bed, and then...
Hey everyone, it's November 4th. It's 2:30 in the morning. I don't know if my water just broke or not. There's blood everywhere. I mean, I'm talking... like, I'm gushing bright red blood right now. I called the midwife. She wants me to head to the hospital. It does not sound good.
Yeah, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I woke up in a pool of blood. I woke up and I felt my water break. Like, I felt that pop and the release. And I was like, oh, it's time. I have to call my midwife. I jumped up out of my bed. I was so excited. And then I turned on the light, and my excitement turned to fear and horror within seconds. I was terrified. There was blood everywhere. The water was stained like dark brown red. Not a drop of it was clear. It was running down my legs. It was pooling on my floor. It was all over my sheets and my mattress. Thank you, mattress protector. But, it was scary. So that's how it all started, with fear. And so I called my midwife, and she at first was like, it's probably just, your bloody show. Let's see. So I sent her a picture, and she said, no, you get in the car, you go to the hospital now. Like, when you said there was a lot of blood, I didn't think you actually meant. So we went, and we got there, and they admitted me right away. I started having contractions in the car. So I was thinking, well, maybe, but I was really scared.
Guys, I'm in the hospital. I'm having very consistent contractions, 2 to 3 minutes apart. I'm having one right now. Her head is so low, there's so much pressure, and there's just blood everywhere. I'm so scared.
So we get there and, get all admitted and everything. They check me out, and they're like, okay, you are bleeding a lot. there's a couple of things this could be. We're going to get an ultrasound in to check your placenta to rule that out first. So they brought in the ultrasound. The lady was like, it doesn't really look like your placenta, but your baby's covering more than half of it, so it's really hard to tell. There is like a lot of extra like gunk in there, so maybe it's meconium, but it could be like blood starting to clot and form. We're not really sure, so we're gonna wait like an hour or so, and then we'll try again. My contractions were coming steadily every 2 to 3 minutes, but at that point, hearing that they couldn't definitively say it was my placenta and that they were gonna allow like an hour to wait because they didn't think it was super emergent, that put me at ease. I started munching on ice chips and just moaning my way through the contractions. I started feeling some pressure as she started to descend, but as she started to descend and they checked me, they discovered I was 8.5 centimeters, and the doctor decided to check me during a contraction, which was like the most painful thing I've ever experienced. And when I contracted and he had his hand up there, when he pulled it out, blood just came pouring out all over the bed. It went down onto the floor. It went up on his like gloves and everything. It was everywhere. And the nurse and doctor just looked at each other. They slammed a button on the wall. Nurses started flooding into the room. My husband had to back up. They told me, we're prepping you for a C-section. We have to go now. Apparently the monitor started going crazy and everything. And I don't remember much of it. At that point, my husband says I kind of like blacked out and like I kind of went nuts. I was like screaming and clawing at people, but then after a few minutes of that, I like snapped out of it, he said, and I just got really like focused. And for some reason I was like, I have to like give this update that I'm going in for C-section. You have to call people, because if I go in there, I might, the way the doctors and nurses were like hustling and like this, the whole room took on this really serious air, and I thought I might not make it out.
For a C-section.
Big stick.
Okay. Se va a entrar.
So yeah, as you could see, I was terrified. I was extremely upset. They wheeled me down to the OR, and as the lights were blinking over my head, I just kept thinking to myself, this is how I'm gonna die. This is it. This is the day that I'm going to die. And I've never been more scared in my life, I don't think. It was awful. The surgery itself was pretty smooth. The doctor was excellent. The anesthetist was so sweet. He was sitting by my head. He was like rubbing my hair. He's like, you're going to be fine, sweetheart. Just deep breaths. Just keep breathing. Just keep, and the nursing staff was good. I had one nurse who stayed and she held my hand the whole time. And she was amazing. And, I was so scared. And then they got her out and she was healthy and perfect. And they let me hold her a little bit in the OR.
So what do you think, kid? What do you think?
Oh, she's so perfect.
We did good, huh?
Hi, baby.
Hi.
I've been waiting for you for so long.
3 whole years.
I've been waiting for you for such a long time.
So that was really special and something I was not expecting. But it was only because she came out so healthy. They had like the NICU team kind of waiting in the corner just in case. And then when they got to my placenta, we realized that it was a nearly complete placental abruption. And that's what the cause of all the blood was. I wound up, after they took her back, they gave her to my husband. They went to recovery to wait for me after about 30 minutes. And then I kind of like faded out of consciousness, at which point they realized how much blood like I had lost grand total. So they started the transfusion. I went to recovery, kind of came to, and then I got to hold her and everything. So, I mean, it was so nice that I got to hold her in the OR. I think that was my favorite part of the experience, even though overall I hated the entire experience. And I feel kind of guilty saying that still, a year and a half later, that my daughter's birth was one of the worst days of my life. But, I mean, it was horrifying. Afterwards, after everything was all said and done, we got home from the hospital 5 days later. There were some complications after the delivery with both my health and my daughter's, and it required a lot of extra observation. She actually wound up having to be in one of those isolates for a couple different reasons. One of them being severe jaundice, and then a few other things. She had like a little viral infection and everything. And they said all that complications and stuff were more common with cesarean babies. And it was just this whole big ordeal. So we finally got home from the hospital, and I was so happy to be home. And I said in one of my update videos, like I think one of the first vlogs I posted once I was home after everything was, you know, it's not the way we planned, but she's healthy and that's all that matters. And I'm coming back now, a year and a half later, to correct that statement, because that statement was what was expressed to me in the hospital by the nurses. It was expressed to me by my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, and my uncles. Oh, well, thank goodness you and her are both safe and healthy and you made it through. That's what really matters. Well, at least your baby's healthy and at least your baby's alive. And that's what was being drilled into my head. And so I just accepted it. I put a smile on my face and I said, okay, yeah, she's healthy, so that's what matters. But, you know, that's not all that matters. Mother care matters too, and your mental health and your emotional state regarding your birth experience before, during, and after also matters. Yes, a healthy baby, you know, and everything, that's so important, and it does matter, but it is not the only thing that matters. You matter too. Your emotions about your birth experience matter too. Whether you loved your birth experience or, like me, you hated every second of it basically and wish you could just erase it from your memory. Your feelings on that matter. So while a healthy baby is important, and you know, you both surviving the labor and delivery experience is important, it's not the only thing that matters. I really struggled with my birthing experience with her for months. I had night terrors. I would wake up sweating and screaming. It was awful. I just kept replaying it over and over in my head. I couldn't talk about it without getting emotional and choked up. I couldn't go back to my job as a doula for about 6 months. After she was born, I could not step into a hospital. I would have panic attacks and flashbacks. Luckily, I found a great therapist who specialized in it. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder related to her birth, which I already have anxiety, acute social anxiety disorder. So that didn't help, like with the panic attacks from my anxiety and then the PTSD. It was just all kinds of hot messness. But with a lot of therapy and like birth healing circles, I was able to really come to terms with, this is something that happened to me and this is how our birth experience went. But this does not define me. I cannot let this control my life. Yes, it was something that happened. No, it was not something that I had planned, but I'm going to work with it. It is now part of who I am and part of my story, and I can use it to make me a better birth worker, knowing what I know now about the process from a first-hand experience instead of just seeing clients go through it or reading it in a book. You know, I now have this first-hand experience, and now I know what it feels like to feel like your body failed and to feel like you didn't really give birth to your child. They were just removed from you. And to feel these things, and, you know, because you hear people say, oh, you know, my C-section birth, I feel like my body failed, and oh, I feel like I just gave up, or I feel like I didn't really give birth. And you can empathize and say, no, you know, you're still strong, you did a great job, you know, it's still a birth. But once you go through it yourself, and then you're experiencing these feelings yourself, you're like, oh, I get it. I get what they were saying now. You know, I understand why they felt that way, because now I'm feeling this way too. And I need someone to come alongside me and assure me that I'm still okay. And I did give birth. You know, maybe I didn't give birth vaginally, but a cesarean is still a birth. And, you know, I really needed people to rally behind me. And thankfully, I have really great birth workers here that I work closely with, other doulas, lactation consultants, my midwife team, you know, that I'm here, that I network with, that were able to rally behind me and really encourage me and lift me up. And, you know, now 17 months later, I can talk about it, and it is, I freely admit that it is part of my experience. Do I wish I never had to go through it? Of course, you know, and I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone. But it is important to recognize the experience and say, this is something that happened to me. And, you know, now with April being Cesarean Awareness Month, I feel like it's really important to talk about it and just be honest that, yeah, there are definitely things, if I could change, I would change about her birth in a heartbeat. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is part of my journey now and part of my story. And sometimes it is hard to come to grips with it, you know, but it's just, I have to. But I guess one of the most important things to remember is that birth trauma is real. No matter how you birth, whether it's vaginally in a forest surrounded by woodland creatures or via an emergency cesarean, that was not planned and, you crash on the table, there can be birth trauma in any kind of birth, regardless of outcomes, regardless of, who your support team is. That birth trauma is real, and no one's experience should be made to feel like, oh, well, at least, you both survived and you're both okay, that's what matters. If you know somebody who experiences an unplanned emergency cesarean birth, no matter what the reason for that is, things you can say are, oh, you did great, oh, your baby's beautiful, how are you feeling, can I help you in any way? Things you shouldn't say is, oh, well, you can always try again next time if you have another baby, or what went wrong, or, at least you're both healthy. Those are things you should not say. Come behind, be supportive, because especially someone who just experienced an unplanned emergency cesarean, they're probably feeling a little confused, a little lost. Maybe like they failed in some way, and it is so important that, as a tribe, we all come together and we say, you did not fail. Birth is unpredictable. Birth is crazy. And thank goodness we live in an era where if something does go wrong and there needs to be medical intervention of the most severe kind, we live in a society and in a place where that is accessible to us. You may get a bill that puts you in debt for however many years when it's done, but, we have life-saving equipment and life-saving procedures now that are accessible to us. And you did not fail. If you are experiencing birth trauma, whether it is from a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, I'm available to talk. If you guys want to reach out to me, whether on here or on my Facebook page, or shoot me a private message on Instagram, I'm available. I will talk to you, from one person to another who has experienced birth trauma and has had to do months of therapy and coping and finally come to terms with, I did not fail. I am still a powerful and beautiful birthing goddess. It may not have happened the way I envisioned and dreamed and really wanted it to, but it happened, and it is part of my story. And a lot of people ask me now, since I have made no secret that we are not done having children, we want more children in the future. So a question I get a lot is, are you planning on a vaginal birth attempt, VBAC, when you do get pregnant again, or will you be scheduling a repeat cesarean? And my answer to that kind of is twofold. If I have a healthy pregnancy, much like Caroline's pregnancy, if it's healthy and normal and everything looks good, I will be attempting a home birth. Obviously, vaginal delivery. So home birth after cesarean is the plan. I am going to try again. I am not going to let fear of the what ifs stop me. If you look at the pros and cons and risks, it is less risky than having a repeat cesarean. The risk of rupture is less than 1%, and then not all ruptures are catastrophic. So I know someone will probably bring something like that up. I will absolutely be attempting a vaginal birth after cesarean. If for some reason the pregnancy was high risk, or there were complications, or of course baby's breech, something like that, then I would just go ahead and, for peace of mind, schedule a cesarean. When the time comes, I'm just going to trust my gut, but for now the plan is definitely to give it everything I've got to get a VBAC here at home. But yeah, that really kind of wraps it up. I just wanted to recap my experience for maybe those of you who are newer, and just remind you all that, I've been there, I've gone through it, and if you need someone to talk to about birth trauma, or even if you had like birth trauma years ago and you're coming up on a delivery here soon and you're nervous or you're worried, feel free to reach out to me. If you're planning on a future pregnancy and you've had a cesarean and you don't know if you want to try for a VBAC or just schedule a repeat cesarean, check out your local I Can chapter. Just give them a Google. It's the International Cesarean Awareness Network. They have tons of resources. They can help you find a great care provider in your area if maybe you don't have one, or you're new to your area, or you want to switch providers from your last birthing experience. You know, they're a great resource, and there's local chapters all over the world. So that's a good resource if you're debating on a repeat cesarean or a VBAC. There's a Facebook group, VBAC support group, which if you ask me, just shoot me a message on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/raisingreynolds. If you want to be added to that, I can add you to that if you're hoping to VBAC in the future. But yeah, that's kind of it. If anyone's looking for any kind of resources, just feel free to reach out to me. I have tons. I may do another video on Cesarean Awareness Month covering some other things, like being a doula at a cesarean birth, like what that looks like for me, and can you have a doula at a cesarean birth? I may do that in like a week or two. Who knows? But this was just really on my heart to share my experience with you today and remind you that you know, it always gets darkest before the dawn, and if you are suffering from birth trauma, please reach out to someone. If it's not me, reach out to someone that you can trust, that you can talk to, who will help you move through it, because you can move through it. For a while there, after her birth, I thought that it was going to impact me forever, that I was never going to be able to walk into a hospital again without having flashbacks, that I would never be able to smell iodine again without wanting to vomit. You know, that I would be bitter and jealous of any clients that I may take who wanted a natural birth and got one. You know, I was so conflicted, and all these emotions were running through my head, and I was so scared that my own personal birth trauma and then the PTSD that stemmed from that, I was so scared that that was going to define me for the rest of my life, that it would ruin my career and basically make it so that I was unable to pursue what I love doing. And, you know, that was a big fear of mine, and I am so thankful that I was able to reach out and get connected and get the help that I needed to process, you know, everything and come out on the other side better and stronger and ready to rock and roll and tackle whatever life brings next. So I really encourage you to reach out. If it's not to me, reach out to someone. There are people who care about you, and, you know, there are people who will help you walk through it. So, yeah, but I'll see you guys hopefully Wednesday, fingers crossed, for Workout Wednesday. And if anyone has any questions, again, feel free to leave them below, and I'll do my best to get to them. But until next time, guys, bye.